Tonight, Democrats in the New York State Assembly weighing in on who should replace Sheldon Silver, what seems to be the outgoing speaker. Silver, following his arrest on federal corruption charges, now the question is, who will be replacing the man who was one of the three men in the room? And does it surprise any that he may be going quietly into the good night? And also how difficult will it prove to replace his leadership? We'll get into that and all the legal questions as well coming up tonight. Also, we take a look at the High Court of the land, the fight over same-sex marriage. History has shown us that the highest court often rules in favor of public opinion. We had a debate this morning. We'll bring you into the conversation. Is this truly the case, and should it be when it comes to the justice system? Plus, Army Sergeant Bo Bergdahl, he may be charged with desertion after abandoning his post, putting his fellow troops in harm's way as they search for him. However, he could be penalized harshly or possibly walk away with a slap on the wrist. What would justice be in this case? We'll discuss. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us. And tonight we will start in Albany, where the State Assembly considering who ought to succeed Assembly Speaker Sheldon Silver. After 2 days of closed-door meetings, the Assembly, they've announced that Silver will vacate his post by Monday, and a successor will be chosen in 2 weeks. Now, the Majority Leader, Joseph Morelli, he'll serve as Speaker until February 10th. That is when an election will be held to fill the post permanently or for the next 2 years. Now, some of Silver's possible successors include Mr. Morelli, who's the Majority Leader, Carl Heastie, who's chair of the Bronx Democratic Party, Assemblyman Joe Lenthal, who represents North Brooklyn in the Assembly since '72, Assemblywoman Catherine Nolan, who represents the 37th Assembly District. She vying to become the Assembly's first female speaker, and the aforementioned Assemblyman Keith Wright from the city. As we've reported, Silver was arrested on federal corruption charges last week. Federal prosecutors saying that he collected nearly $4 million in kickbacks over a decade. He led the chamber for 21 years. I want to bring in our panel right now. Richard Brodsky, former member and a former colleague of the Assemblyman, Mr. Silver here. He's also senior fellow at Demos, professor of NYU, and a ubiquitous figure on the media landscape. Yes. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author, who said last night that Shelley would be on his way out. Andrew Whitman, a senior political correspondent, who along with me wasn't so sure. Andrew, you spoke earlier today with Gannett's Albany bureau chief about the corruption case and where it stands right now and some of the stuff behind the scenes.
Yeah, including what happened behind closed doors in that Democratic conference and where the conference goes from here. I spoke with Joseph Spector about the future of the Assembly and Silver's political career going forward. Here's some of what he had to say. Joe, in the past few days, the Silver story has had more twists and turns than a primetime drama. First, he was staying as Speaker, then he was stepping aside temporarily with 5 people replacing him, then 2. And now today he's out. We're not even sure if he resigned or was really pushed out. Give us the Reader's Digest version of what we know happened inside the Democratic conference.
Well, we know over the last few days, it became clear to them that they no longer wanted Speaker Silver to be the Speaker. The public pressure, concerns about his arrest last Thursday ultimately pushed the majority of members to decide that he needed to step aside for the best of the state and the best of the conference. And then the question became, well, how did they do that? Because the Speaker didn't indicate that he was going to immediately resign. So they took 2 days behind closed doors to really figure out the procedural steps, how to go ahead and remove the Speaker if in fact he won't resign. So by the end of the day yesterday, he said he would step aside, but didn't lay out exactly how he'll do that, except that they all agreed that he would be gone come Monday when he returned for session.
And we'll see how this all actually plays out on Monday. Now, we're hearing that the interim Speaker will be Majority Leader Joseph Morelli. What do we know about Morelli, and how likely is he to win the speakership outright once they vote on it on February 10th?
Right. Well, that's the big question. Who will be the Speaker come February 10th? I mean, obviously, Assemblyman Morelli is there now. He'll guide the Assembly through the next couple of weeks. He's done so over the last tumultuous week here, being sort of the face of the conference as they deal with the issues surrounding Silver. And, he's a lawmaker from Rochester. He's been in the Assembly since 1991, so he's one of the more senior members. He's well liked as the Majority Leader, a position that Silver appointed him to in 2013. He's viewed as a moderate Democrat, has had relationships with business leaders. He's taken some stances in favor of business tax cuts, but he's also liberal on social issues like the majority of the conference. So he's somebody who is on the short list of people who could be the permanent leader come February 10th.
Whether it's Morelli or somebody else who ends up as speaker, can anybody keep control of that Democratic conference the way Shelley Silver has for 20 years?
Well, you're dealing with an unprecedented, really, situation here. I mean, you're dealing with the speaker who was 1 year away from being the longest-serving speaker in state history. So for 20 years, he reigned, and now we're starting from scratch. Who will be the speaker? What type of issues they would want to pursue? How will they be able to work with the governor's office, with the Senate, and ultimately serve at the pleasure of their own conference? The speaker's goal is to take the conference's positions to the governor, to the public, to the Senate, and try to negotiate deals here.
And finally, Joe, we're still getting official reactions from everybody, all the key players in the state, but in their heart of hearts, behind closed doors, when nobody else is listening, how do you think Governor Cuomo, Mayor de Blasio, and the state's top Republican, Dean Skelos, are really thinking or fearing with Silver's departure?
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be the big issue here. It's interesting that they didn't make a decision right away over who the new speaker would be. So that's going to allow some time now for special interests, the various leaders, to figure out who they are going to support, or if they're even going to get involved at all. If you get involved, how does that affect the person who you're trying to support? If you're Governor Cuomo, maybe it's viewed negatively by the conference if you were to come out and support a candidate, even to do so behind closed doors. The same for de Blasio. He's made it clear, de Blasio, he wants a leader from the city. How will that impact some of the members? So those are all key questions, and you really have this window here where everybody's going to be jockeying for position.
As they say with any good drama, tune in tomorrow. Joe Spector, Albany Bureau Chief for Gannett. Joe, thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right. Now, we're going to break this down into political and also into some of the legal questions. But first, Richard, I'll start before we get to that with the personal. You served for 28 years with Shelley Silver. Conventional wisdom was, for those who covered it and from the outside, as smart as a guy as there was in Albany. Fair?
No question.
Again, he will have his day as court. He says he'll be vindicated. But if you take the charges at face value, and obviously you read the complaint, does that match up with the guy you knew? Were you floored when, like the rest of us, you saw the U.S. Attorney's press conference?
The stupidity of the behavior, aside from its illegality, if it was, is mind-boggling. But
especially for him, right?
But for anybody with a brain, but with a guy with his skills. But there's a third element to this that the pundits, you people, sorry, are missing, which is this.
How it leads in and out of that pool, Dominic, and it suits you.
You were right about there being legal questions. You were right about there being political questions. But what drove the grassroots revolt that pushed Shelley out were ethical concerns. The great majority, the overwhelming majority, the people who serve in that chamber are honest, hardworking, and give a damn. And but
just ignore me. Keep going.
I understand that I'm swimming upstream.
You okay, Don?
But no, I mean, it's just true. And what Shelley represented to them wasn't so much a legal problem. There is the presumption of innocence. It wasn't just a political problem where people are concerned about it. It was that even if what Shelley did was perfectly legal, it stank.
Was it just one too many of these things?
No, it was not one too many. No, he has not been in and out of the fire. By any fair and reasonable look, this is the best negotiator Albany's ever seen. The agenda that protected the progressive policies of the state, school aid, education, environment, women's rights, Shelley was the guy who negotiated the best possible deals. Give him that credit, even as you point out that, legal or illegal, it stinks. And what happened was that the leadership cadre, not just Shelley, the Gang of Five, came in with a deal for a committee thing, and the rank and file, the relatively junior members said, no, you don't get it. It's not just about whether he broke the law, it's about whether this is the kind of behavior we can sustain on an ethical basis. We can't out.
Okay, so take me as much as you can behind the scenes. I know you've talked to some of the principals. It seemed, Richard, day, even 2 days, even 3 days after that press about Bahar, right, with all the press that went along with it, that the rank and file were standing behind him, or at least leadership voices were.
No,
what happened when all of a sudden it went with, he's our guy too, you got 24 hours?
There was a shift, because the first day's reaction was a reaction to legal charges. 3 times, other than this case, in the last 20 years, legislative leaders have been indicted and eventually exonerated. There is a presumption of innocence. But what happened was the members looked at this and decided that the filter that you looked at through wasn't the presumption of innocence, it wasn't the political problems, it was ethical. And that they did not want to be led by a man who, even if innocent, had done stuff which on its face stank.
Yep. Okay. So now we get to the fight for leadership. And first off, was there reticence by some members to go after Shelley? Because there's been attempted and failed coups before, and there's always a thing, if you're going to go after the king, you better kill the king.
This wasn't a coup because there was nobody attempting to take him out. This was the members sitting back and absorbing a set of accusations, facts, laws, politics, and then ethics.
Okay.
So this wasn't a coup.
So we got between now to February 10th here where there's going to be a lot of jockeying going on behind the scenes. Andrew was saying before, it's been a long time since we've had somebody other than from downstate that's been leading the majority, that's been the Assembly Speaker before. What's your sense? What are the different plays and narratives going on?
There will be regional arguments. There will be ethnic and gender arguments. There will be ideological arguments. But they're going to be much less powerful in this case than they were when Mel Miller was convicted or when Saul Weber died and Shelley became Speaker. And the reason is because, as I keep saying, the rank and file got up on its hind legs and said no more. So the questions the candidates are going to get are, where do you get your money? Do you have any weaknesses? Tell us. What's your plan for not just change in law, but cultural change?
Well, to that point,
can you stand up to the governor?
I asked these two cynics, Richard, and I said to me last night.
I'm not talking about it.
But I said last night to them, I believe that there's a chance coming out of this that we could have a better Albany. That this might be, there might be more of the transparency we talked about and everything else. And they said, please, you're just going to basically be rearranging the deck chairs. Did I say that fairly?
It's nonsense, and it's insulting nonsense because
they got history on their side.
No, they don't. There are. Albany is functional and honest. It has real problems, but it is not like the Congress, and the problems that they've had in the last couple of years, which are real and need to be fixed, are not an indictment of the system. They're an indictment of a political culture which informs the system, and not just in the legislature. You want to do percentages, 8% of the legislature taken out in handcuffs, a third of the governors in the metropolitan region, Rowland, McGreevey, Spitzer,
we'll give you
David Patterson. Don't start me with this stuff.
Guys, you got the best guy for this. Now you're a good friend of the show, but
they can't talk.
Yes.
They get too much airtime. Look, the fact of the matter is that the bulk of people there are just like you and I, frail, mistake-prone, honest, and trying to do the right thing as they understand it. And if you buy this notion that the members are either sheep or thieves or idiots, then you don't understand what happened and why Shelley on Thursday was able to be there and 4 days later was gone. The members didn't want it.
I really do love Richard Brodsky.
I
really do. I really do.
I
really do love him.
Don't help. Stop helping me.
No, you know why? You know why I really love Richard Brodsky? Because he really believes what he just said.
I'm an idiot.
No.
You love me because I'm an idiot.
No. He really believes it. He really believes in the institution.
I know it to be true.
Okay. He really believes in the institution. But the institution is corrupt to the core. They come in learning how to scam the system.
You go up there twice a year and you think you know.
No, that's what the problem is.
You're up there twice a year and you think you know. He's up there once a year and he thinks he knows.
Wait,
he doesn't go and he thinks he knows.
That's what the problem is. Elected officials go to Albany where there's no light on what they're doing. There's very little media coverage.
Is the governor corrupt?
And the papers are cutting back. The newspapers are cutting back.
Is the governor corrupt?
Is
the governor corrupt?
Ask Prepa. I love that
You
answer.
just said the Assembly and the Senate are corrupt. Is the governor corrupt?
No, that's not what I said.
You're a chicken.
I'll be done in just 1 second. Just one
Growl.
second. They all, I'll press the play record right now. They all learn the game of scamming to start nonprofits, push the taxpayer dollars through nonprofits, the money goes back into the pocket. It's illegal, and the U.S. attorney is going to have a field day in Albany, and that's why Mr. Bahara says, quote, stay tuned.
Does the governor do that?
The governor appears within the law. Plays within
so
the
the
system
governor
of the
is
law.
different. So the system isn't corrupt. It's just the legislature.
No, but the question.
Okay. All right.
But we're not talking about the system.
I know you're yelling
We're
at me.
talking about criminal activity. That's what we're talking
Eric is
about.
yelling at me.
Okay, so
All
we
right,
don't want
so,
Eric.
we don't
Eric
want
is
Eric.
pregnant.
She's
We don't want
pregnant.
her to yell.
I don't want to.
We don't want to yell.
All right,
in charge
Richard, here we go. I'm going to go through them and real quickly tell me how they're feeling tonight after the news. Governor Cuomo, is he pleased or displeased?
Chaos is never good for a governor.
Mr. Skelos, is he saying, hey, there's dissension maybe in Democratic ranks, I'll get a better deal? Is he worried he doesn't have a professional on the other side of the table?
When Preet Bharara says stay tuned.
That's what he's talking about.
Okay. Again, he knows everything.
Skelos is in the
Houdini.
same. Skelos, I made the prediction last night. I was accurate. I'm telling you tonight, Skelos is in the same position just about that Silver is in.
Finally, Mayor de Blasio, did he lose his biggest ally?
Yes.
Well, in some sense he did, but in another
Yes.
sense, the reason the Democratic Assembly and Shelley was so able to function on behalf of downstate had less to do with Shelley personally than that the conference wanted it that way.
I
the
love
conference
Richard
would still.
Brodsky.
I was there.
I said I love you,
No, I
man.
don't, stop loving me.
I can't love you.
It's not
I
that
can't
kind of
love
a
you.
show.
Not that there's
All right.
anything wrong with
Yeah,
it.
exactly. Barrister, stay with me. You're going to put your legal hat on in a
Still get
second.
paid for not participating.
Oh, this is the most fun I've ever seen Andrew in 15 minutes of my life. All right. Dominic and Andrew, before Dominic, I don't know, goes in for the full Monty here, they're going to leave us. They're going to bring in the legal panel in a second. We're going to talk what could happen next on the legal side for Shelley Silver here, and how hard will it be for the U.S. Attorney to actually prove that Silver is guilty of corruption and words like fraud and extortion. We'll talk about that after this.